Ayatollah Khamenei's son is the new leader of Iran, according to the Wall Street Journal and others. So to Tom's point, if you wanted to, I mean, how does that even, what is your understanding of the current objective?
Well, mine is just about as clear as yours, and that is I have no understanding of what the objective is. I don't get it. What I said the other day to you on this program, what now? What now? It will not surprise me if Trump claims victory. But what they've done in Iran over the last few days is they have put in as their leader someone who is a mirror image of the leader, the horrible, repressive leader that was killed by the United States military. Not only is he a mirror image of the leader that was killed by the U.S. military, his entire family was killed by the U.S. military. And Trump has some idea that he's going to call him up and say, hey, Donald, what's up? Let's get together. They're going to do whatever they can do to bring pain to the United States of America. And this is not over by a long shot. And if they don't have a plan on what now, then it's not going to be good news for the American people in any way, economically or safety-wise.
I want to bring Pete Hegseth into focus a little bit. Tim Miller, let me show you how he answered this question about boots on the ground.
Do we have any overt or covert forces inside Iran now?
I wouldn't tell you that if we did.
The only reason I ask is earlier this week you said no. Is that still the answer?
Yeah, that's still the answer, but we reserve the right. We would be completely unwise if we did not reserve the right to take any particular option, whether it included boots on the ground or no boots on the ground.
So, Tim, what's interesting to me is the body language, right? And I always wonder how people around the world are watching this. But first is the smirk. Then is, well, ninny, I wouldn't tell you if I did. And then is, oh, yeah, I'll tell you. No, but might be yes. Again, privately, I have no idea how he acts. All we have is what he puts out there. The brilliance and the competence and the courage of the military are its own stunning thing. And I want to really cleave Pete Hegseth off of that in terms of his public utterances. That was disturbing in its weakness. I'm not going to tell you, but yeah, I will. I mean, what was that?
Yeah, and the smirk gave away the whole game, right, Nicole? Look, I'm not a body language expert, and I was never going to be White House press secretary if any of my candidates had won, because all the viewers right now can know what I think about Pete Hegseth just looking at my face, right? And that's certain types of people. Pete was meant, I think, to be a weekend talk show host, or co-host rather, and I think that he was good at that, and he has an expressive face, but it's like his smirk at Major told us all we need to know. Obviously, we have covert boots on the ground there. Obviously, he's lying. His response was a tell, and then, as you said, it was kind of weak, his follow-up response to that. He's not up for this. Luckily, as you mentioned, we have a lot of competent people underneath him, but look, he also is even in charge, is even running the show, right? And, his answer in a separate clip of that interview was that this war is just getting started. Well, the president apparently called Weijia at CBS today and said it might be over soon. So, there is no strategy, so he can't offer a clear strategy. And, he has no, kind of gravitas and experience to be a clear messenger in this, so he's not going to be. And what we have is just a very amateurish, childish person in charge of the Department of War at a very serious time when we've already lost 7 Americans and a bunch of people that we've wrongly killed in Iran. And I guess that would be my last comment on this. Is he's obviously lying on that. Maybe there's reason to lie about whether we have special forces there. There is no reason to lie about the fact that we are responsible for the death of 100 some odd children in southern Iran. And that's exactly what Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth did when they were asked about that yesterday.
I'm going to show you this because Donald Trump is obsessed with this program and watches it. This is SNL's depiction of Pete Hegseth.
Now, a lot of the press have looks on their faces like, duh? So now I'm going to be taking your questions and throwing them directly into a trash can. You, Hanson brother, go.
Secretary Hegseth, you said this war could...
Wait, war? Okay, whoever called this a war? Except maybe the president a couple times accidentally. Okay? This isn't a war. Also, why do we have to put labels on everything, okay? What are you, my high school girlfriend, which I had? This isn't a war, okay? It's a situationship. Right? We're just going to hook up. We're going to see where it goes, okay? If it feels good, we'll keep going. And if we get bored, we'll start hooking up with Cuba.
So it's funny, but it's also the actual policy. I mean, Lindsey Graham went on a Sunday show, told the story of how he coached Israel into doing what Rubio said we did, following Israel into war, and said Cuba's next. What happens inside the military to the men and women of the military and their families when this is how decisions of life and death are made, Tom Nichols?
Hegseth's not the first Secretary of Defense didn't have fans inside the military. Don Rumsfeld wasn't very popular either. But I think the difference was that people took Rumsfeld seriously, and that whether they liked him or not, or whether they thought he was a good Secretary of Defense or not, that when he spoke, he was somebody that you had to listen to and pay attention to. Here, the Secretary of Defense is this kind of featherweight presence who comes out and he says a lot of dumb stuff, and he sounds like he talks like a meme off the internet. He talks like he's right out of a bunch of teenagers posting stuff on the internet, and I think that means that everyone has to look to somebody else, the president, Dan Kane, General Kane, to tell them exactly what's going on. And I think that's really a dangerous and unfortunate thing, because this is the largest war we've been in 20 years. And, this is where you need a real Secretary of Defense, somebody who can speak with authority, somebody who projects confidence. I mean, I think Tim's point about, and your point about the body language and about kind of the unseriousness and sort of the inability to get out of the weekend Fox host mode, is really important, because there are thousands and thousands of people in the Defense Department and millions of people in this country and millions more around the world who want to know what the Secretary of Defense has to say about why we're in this war, what we're targeting, mistakes we may have made, successes we've had. And instead, Hegseth is, coming out and, sort of fist pumping and doing bro speak. And it's not just embarrassing, but in the middle of a war, it's hazardous. It's a problem.
Tom, this isn't something that I've seen out there, but I want to ask you, one of the earliest things that Pete Hegseth did was to kick the press out. And one of the hallmarks of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan and the ongoing years that America was in those wars is that the men and women of the military had very tight relationships with the press corps that covered the Pentagon. And there was a pretty free flow of information, good, bad, and ugly. Do you have this sense that any of that is happening right now, that uniformed military has permission to speak with the press?
Well, my friends and colleagues who cover the Pentagon are still covering the Pentagon. Pete Hegseth apparently thought that if you kicked them all out of the building and replaced them with, kind of third string sycophantic hangers-on, that somehow the coverage would change. But professional journalists still find a way to get people to talk to them. And yes, there are still people who want to talk and share information, because we are, the one thing Pete Hegseth doesn't get, we are all on the same side here. We are all Americans. But Hegseth, and I think this comes from Trump and his attitude, Hegseth thinks that anybody that isn't explicitly signed on as a member of the team and, has taken the vow of loyalty is by definition an enemy and therefore can't be trusted. So when someone says, I'm not going to sign, this ridiculous piece of paper that says that I will only report the Pentagon's version of everything, that's immediately a sign for people like Hegseth that you are the enemy. But that there are a lot of other perfectly, patriotic Americans who don't think that way, who are willing to speak to other Americans because, again, they consider we're all on the same side. We're all countrymen and women here, and so of course they can still do their job, but it makes it harder. It just makes it harder for everybody. And it means that when Hegseth gets out there and garbles his message, it's even worse because there isn't anybody there to kind of ask him to clarify it or go through it with him. And so we get the kind of conversation we're having now about what the hell is Pete Hegseth talking about.